Hi, Tammy Davis. I appreciate you stopping in and taking a look at this video. Um, it's a little bit different than what I customarily do. It is on health, though, but it's more along the lines of emotional health. And even though it doesn't seem like it's related to our physical health conditions, it is directly related because the chemistry that's produced in the mind and the brain is used throughout the body for every function. And when we're stressed, and that could be physical, mental, emotional, and or environmental. It could be one, it could be all. But when we are stressed, the chemistry of the body is altered, not because the body's not working, but because the body is actually in fact working, and it's just in survival mode at that point. And so long-term, ongoing survival mode is the reason why we have excessive levels of oxidative stress and inflammation. The body is actually designed to undo the oxidative stress. Everything that it does, it's designed to undo. So for every free radical, or like I said, the oxidative stress that we produce, all the inflammation that we produce, we have the ability to deactivate that process. It's just not happening. So how does this relate to emotional health? Well, this all came about because I'm just going to be really transparent right now. There was a situation, or there is a situation, there's a lot of changes that are occurring in my life right now. And I've noticed that I've had a lot of emotions around it, anger, jealousy, fear. Obviously, fear is really the root of all of it, but doubt. And I could go on. And the interesting thing about it is I got into a conversation with someone yesterday, and this individual was very determined to have me relate and basically saying, well, I get your circumstances and I can understand and blah, blah, blah. It was going on and on and on. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Circumstances have nothing to do with it. You may think that they do, and many people think that they do. But from my perspective, the circumstances are essentially the poker. They are there to actually wake us up. And so what ends up happening is we get these circumstances, and I've always told people, like, you can't make me upset. The only person that can make me upset is me. And and I've had people apologize to me for things that they may have said or done that might have upset me. And I'm like, but it wasn't you, it was me. And this is really kind of how I've approached my life for many years now, realizing that whenever I feel something, an emotion, I explore it as to what this is about. It's just a point of self-discovery for me, is how I see difficult times with people. And I see the same thing with circumstances, that challenging circumstances aren't there to irritate us and to destroy us. They're actually there to enhance our lives if we can actually step away from the emotion long enough to see them as positive triggers, because at that point we get to identify the belief systems, or the belief system that we have for ourselves. We are a world over 7.5 billion people, and we do have there's cultures, but everybody is a culture all into themselves, and we develop these belief systems according to the schools that we attend, the families that we grow up in, the churches that we go to, or whatever religious or spiritual beliefs that you may have. But at the same time, we're always forming beliefs about ourselves. And at times, this is beneficial because this is what's called a survival mechanism. We have to put this mask on. We have to actually step into a role in order to survive, but we have to be willing to put it down, much like the body has to be able to deactivate that survival mechanism we have to be able to deactivate our emotional survival mechanism. Otherwise, it's running rampant. And this is what I see happening in the world. And if we can begin looking at our circumstances, like I said, as a positive trigger that's there to kind of reveal those beliefs that we have of ourselves, and we can decide in that moment, am I adequate enough? Well, of course I am. Do I deserve? Absolutely. And if you don't feel like you do, then there's work to be done, okay? This isn't about lying to yourself. This is about being brutally honest with yourself. And if you don't feel like you're worthy of something or someone, then it's an opportunity to go inside and heal. Okay, so that's how I see that's how I see challenging circumstances. It's an opportunity to go in and just kind of take a look. Because if they get you riled up, there's something there that needs to be healed, needs to be looked at and nurtured. So with that in mind, like I said, that's the discussion we were having. And then, at the same time, I'm very present to the number of people, gurus and so forth out there. Everybody's empowering everybody to be happy and grateful and not be emotionally led, basically not being led by your emotions. I mean, making decisions that are more mindful. And that sounds great. And I completely align with that. At the same time, it doesn't leave a lot of room for compassion or understanding. You see, if we don't understand why we have these emotions, then they will never go away. And oftentimes what I see happening in situations with people is that emotions will come up, and obviously they're going to come up for both, because one person starts to have a reaction, whether it's crying or agitation, and then it's going to trigger something in somebody else. This truthfully is not a bad thing. At that point, it's time for everybody to take their corner and start kind of doing some self-exploring. Now, if you are in a position to actually see somebody having an emotional reaction, there's a couple of other things that you can do besides buying into your own emotions. You can just notice that you have these emotions, and maybe you feel like you're not equipped to deal with it, or you don't know what to do. That's a large part, I think, of many people's problem. I don't know what to do for this person because they're having an emotional time. If you don't know what to do, then the next thing you could do is just ask them, what's going on? What are you worried about? Just start asking some open-ended questions and allow this individual, number one, to be seen and understood. And it's a gentle way of dispelling the emotion. It's a gentle way of distilling what's going on, and you're actually being supportive. You're actually helping this person to grow and heal. And so how cool is that? So that's kind of where I've been. And this is, well, like I said, I've had all these emotions, and this is kind of like, I went on this really great hike today and was really kind of exploring all of this, because like I said, we have so many people that I see on social media, and I see them on talk shows, and it's always about not being led by your emotions and being more mindful. But unless we understand, like I said earlier, where these emotions are coming from, and it is really the belief systems that we have of ourselves, and what we've developed over our lifetime, and you can at that moment just realize that this is no longer helping me, or maybe there's a time and a place for it, but it's not helping me right now. And when you can get to that point, then you can mindfully begin to make decisions that serve the situation in a more positive way. So, and then of course, while I was on this hike, I also had this thought, the number of times I've heard people make comments about women and their hormones, right? And that when a woman's hormones are, when it's that time of the month, or she's going through menopause and all of these emotions. Well, let me just say this, first of all, I see plenty of men have emotions. I see so much anger and hostility and aggression. It's unbelievable. So it's not just women. But the point that I'm getting at is we can blame it on hormones, and kind of, you're right, it is hormones, but it's not a bad thing. Because here's the thing. If you think about it, an emotion is basically an exaggerated it's exaggeration. It's an exaggeration of how we feel. It's like it's an inflammation, so to speak, right? Because we feel unworthy, or we feel inadequate, or we doubt, or there's something happening, and it becomes exaggerated, and so we either become depressed, or we become anxious, or we become tearful, angry, however it manifests. And the last thing I want for myself is to be beating myself up for having all these emotions, because when I was a child, we weren't allowed really to express ourselves. In fact, there was a saying in my house that laugh at 7, cry at 11. We really kind of had to mind our emotions. And so when I became older, I was an emotional train wreck. And this is part of what I believe fed my addictions, is because I couldn't deal with them. I didn't know how to deal with them. So I basically quieted them with substances. Since being sober, it's become increasingly helpful for me to not only identify my emotions and be able to talk about them and not just be explosive with it, but also get to this point like I'm talking about today, which is understanding that when I see a health condition, I see, like I said earlier, oxidative stress, inflammation, right? And when the body is aggravated due to physical stress, whether that's medications or trauma, illness, mental and emotional stress, and environmental stress, there's a lot of aggravation that goes on. So basically what you're looking at with a health condition, when it's an illness or such, it really is an inflamed response. Okay, it's just that. It's just an inflamed reaction, hence inflammation in the body, inflamed response with a health condition. When you have an emotion and it's ongoing, and there's so many of us right now that are facing so many different things, and we don't know how to deal with our emotions. And this is and if we begin to look at emotional stress, because keep in mind, now I've been talking about stress, and I mentioned just several times already in this video that emotions do prompt stress. So if you doubt yourself, if you are not feeling worthy, if you're feeling inadequate, if you feel like you aren't good enough, or you're not being heard, or you feel invisible, whatever these concerns are, you're stressing yourself out. You are actually creating stress, and therefore leading to creating inflammation, hence the inflamed reactions from time to time, whether it be, severe depression. So I want to be really clear about this. Inflammation doesn't mean like absolute explosive, like you're out of your mind, and you're just like being crazy, angry, and you might be so angry that you've turned inward. That is what depression is, for one thing. But it could be an exaggeration of sadness, okay, and hopelessness. So this is a result of ongoing stress, emotional stress, that has led to oxidative stress and inflammation, and now it's showing up. And so when we have these emotions, you might want to say it's hormones, but you also might want to go, well, wait a minute, this is a sign that my body is chemically imbalanced, and my body is struggling right now. And yes, you do need to deal with the emotions, and this can get rather complicated, but if you're actually, temporarily complicated, but if you actually realize that, again, any degree of stress, any amount of stress, any kind of stress affects us physiologically. It alters the chemistry altogether. So let's just say you doubt, you worry, you feel inadequate, you don't feel good enough, you don't feel worthy, you feel unlovable, you feel invisible. Again, I could come up with all kinds of things, but this constant belief system is actually undermining your well-being, and it's consistently throwing a wrench in the way your chemistry is working. So if your body is chronically used to operating in this stressed mode, your entire hormonal system is going to be dysregulated. And when it's dysregulated like that, anything is possible. You may have what feels like out of control emotions. And the last thing you need to do is be beating yourself up for it. And the last thing anybody else needs to be doing is making anybody else feel bad for emotions. Yes, we do want to be making decisions and guiding our lives through mindfulness, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact that these emotions are part of being human. And when we come to the understanding of number one, what's causing these emotions that are coming up, as well as what it's doing to the body, then we can begin to help reduce inflammation. We can help negate that inflammatory reaction so that the emotions subside and that we can more mindfully address our concerns. Because let's face it, concerns are there, they're real. So it's not to say that if you mind your emotions or you actually get to the root of your emotions as to what is actually going on, that they will disappear. No, you may still actually have, let's just say you are going in for a job interview, okay? And maybe you doubt that you're going to be good enough and you worry that you're going to say the right things. And if you can understand what is actually sourcing all of those beliefs and realize that that's not helping you, that is not helping you, and finding a way to regroup, because your concern is that you want the job and you're afraid that you're not going to get it. But if you can actually source it with a different level of empowerment, you can still have the concern about getting the job, but at the same time, you could also deliver that. You can deliver yourself, present yourself in a way that is far more powerful and commanding, so that you can actually get what you're looking for. And but like I said, when we have all of these this belief system that goes on, it does lead to an extraordinary amount of stress, which does trigger inflammation. And if we don't get to the root of that emotionally, then it does lead to other bigger problems. More bigger, wasn't a really good way to put it, but they do lead to bigger problems physically or even mentally. And what I found interesting also today was, after coming to all of that, and it was like my sign to do this video, and that was, there was a magazine at the checkout at the grocery store. It said that what your doctor's not telling you about mental illness and other mood disorders, and big letters that said inflammation. And I completely agree with that. It is inflammation, but it's inflammation in the sense that, like I said, it's excessive amounts of oxidative stress that are coming from a various number of avenues, and the emotions are big in that. But I think if we could start, being gentler with ourselves and gentler with one another, we can and allow the emotions. Don't be guided by your emotions, but at least allow them and get to understand what's going on. And again, and some people don't want to do any self-exploration. That's totally okay. But if you are concerned about being an emotional train wreck, which I have for many years, and I can find myself getting, so in interesting scenarios, I can find myself getting aggravated, or I can see something that I don't like, and I can feel myself getting all worked up, and I want to talk about it, but I'm so afraid about how it's going to be perceived, and it just gets kind of crazy. So I just want to stop worrying about that. And, and the people around me, I've actually told them, if you see me getting emotional about something, ask them, what's going on? What are you worried about? Whatever seems like an appropriate question. It actually help ground me and bring me back into myself, so that I can be real, and then recognize, is it really an issue, or is it just, was it a trigger for me to get to that point and release something that no longer served me? So this is about letting go, definitely. But until we can do that, we're also creating more problems within our bodies as well. And so I have to say, and I'm going to include in this video, in the description box, a link to the paper that I've done on the physiological effects of stress, and encourage you to join me also on my Synergessence group, not the page, but the Synergessence group. I'll put that link in the description box below as well. There we talk about essential oils and getting specific, because essential oils are a very important component to healthcare and emotional care and self-stress relief. But it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not found in books or websites. This has got to be in an individual discussion, or it's on an individual basis. And so I created this group so that we can begin discussing certain health conditions and recommended oils, that the oils that I recommend, so that people can begin to see the whys and the why nots, and begin to learn how to differentiate for themselves what's going to be best for them. So again, I'll put that link in the description box. I would love for you to join us. I do appreciate the donations because they help keep me coming back and taking the time, affording the time to be able to be with you and help you through this, because this is a really great process. When it comes to emotions and essential oils, I guess I want to say, because there's a lot of people that want to do, the calming ones, and, and there's a lot of ones that we have, and I don't recommend lavender, if you haven't seen my other videos. Lavender, long-term effects of lavender are actually, long-term effects of lavender increase estrogen. It acts like estrogen on the body, and so that's not really recommended, especially when you're dealing with emotional issues. The other thing is lavender. There's various qualities of lavender, and if for some reason the product you have is not a true lavender and it's either an adulterated lavender or it's a lower priced lavender, because there's, like I said, there's varieties, you might be getting a lavender that is long-term use is neurotoxic. So again, that's another thing, and maybe that's what I'll do on some of my, and that's what I'm going to put in my, that's actually the next thing I'm going to do for my Synergessence group. I'm going to talk about neurotoxicity with essential oils, because that's crucial, especially given the amount of agitation and mental and emotional mood disorders that we're facing. Excessive levels of glutamate can do that, and so to kind of rein it in for this one, good ones I would recommend for just kind of calming and soothing and stabilizing emotions would be Roman chamomile, not German, but Roman chamomile, copaiba, and I'll list these in the box. Copaiba is spelled C-O-P-A-I-B-A. Marjoram Spanish would be a good one, and myrrh. Those would be that would be a good blend that I would recommend for just kind of helping to ease the agitation of emotions that I know will not interfere with any medications at this point. And it also is mildly supportive of the digestive system. So on that note, thanks very much for watching and hearing me out. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. But just know that your emotions have a purpose, and the purpose is to elevate you. Don't let them seduce you into thinking that you're less than. Let them elevate you, and recognize the circumstances is just that. They're just there to awaken you to healing. And the more we can allow these, heal from these emotions, or allow these emotions to heal us, the better off our bodies and our systems are going to be. So my website is synergessence.com. You can reach me, Tammy, at synergessence.com, or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TammyDavis8. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are.